Here's some more keyboard shortcuts we can use with our next project. I'm going to start with our selection tools. All of these keyboard shortcuts will work with either the marquee tools, the lasso tools, or even the quick select and magic wands tools. I'm going to mainly work with our marquee tool just to keep it simple. First of all, whenever you choose any selection tool, pay attention to these four icons at the very top left. The first one, it means you're working in normal selection mode. This means when you click and drag, you can make a selection, and if you click and drag again, you can make a new selection. It just starts over. If you need to add on to a selection, you can either click this second icon. Now when I click and drag, it will add on to my selection. Notice I got a little plus sign at the bottom of my cursor. Or I can stay in normal mode and hold down my Shift key. This will give me an addition to my selection. As long as I'm holding down Shift, I can add on to that selection. That's kind of a common one too. If I need to subtract, well, that's where this third icon comes in. Notice I got a little minus sign at the bottom right of my cursor, and wherever I click and drag to select, it takes away. If I'm working in normal mode, I can hold down the Option key, get my minus, and it will work from there. The final selection is the intersect with selection. This allows you to click and drag over an area, and wherever those two selections meet, it will keep that particular selection. So it's kind of a combination between adding and taking away. I rarely use it, but it does come in handy. Most of the time I'm working in normal mode, and I'm either using Shift to add or Option to erase away from whatever selected area that I have. Another thing to consider is the feathering of your selection. I'm going to click and drag and make a regular circle, and you can see at the very top my feather has been set to 0 pixels. If I was to grab my brush now and paint on the inside of it, I get a nice crisp clean edge right where the edge of my selection is. Command D will deselect it. Now I'm going to make the same selection, but I'm going to increase the amount of feather that I have. Let's do it by something small, 10 pixels. When I click and drag, looks about the same, but now when I grab my brush tool and I start to paint, check out the edging of it. It's feathered. It's a lot softer than what I had before. I can deselect that, and you can see I've got a softer selection made. The more feathering that you do, the higher, let's go up to 25 pixels, the more softer that edge is going to be. Click and drag, grab my brush, and here it is at 25 pixels, much more softer. So if I ever need to make a selection for whatever reason, to delete or to paint out and mask out an area, adding feathering to your selection, grab the marquee, will give you this type of result. Here's a technique for filling in or outlining a selection that you've made. I'm going to still work with my marquee tools, but remember you can do this with any of the tools you have selected. Once you make a selection, if you need to fill in that area, hold down your Control key and click inside of the selected area. Then you can choose to fill. This will bring up our fill dialog box, and from here we can tell it how we want it to be filled in: white, black, gray, or we can choose our foreground color or a specific color in general. Let's fill it in with a certain color. I'll use this blue. When we say OK, it fills it in. Notice I still had feathering turned on, so it feathered that particular edge. But if I drop my feather down to 0, it'll give me a harder edge that I can fill with. Let's do that. Control click, fill, and this time we'll just fill it in with black. And there it is with a solid hard edge. If I wanted to outline an area, again, make your selection, hold down Control and click. This time we're going to choose Stroke. This will bring up a stroke dialog box, and inside of this box you choose the width that you want your stroke to be, usually measured in pixels, and also the color. Then you can choose the location. This means it's going to make a line either inside of your selection, on the center right where your selection is, or on the outside edge of your selection. Additionally, you can change your blending mode. Well, let's set it to 5 pixels. We'll say OK, and you can see I've got a 5 pixel stroke right where my selection was made. This is really good if you need to make an outline of an object and in order to do a clipping mask. So I'm going to turn off this layer. I've got a picture that I'm going to be working with later, and I'm going to make a new layer. So if I wanted to mask out the shape of this bottle, I can use my quick selection tool. I'm going to go quick. I'm going to select the bottle area. So I've got the outline edges selected. To mask it off, hold down Control and click. And I'm going to fill it in. In this case, I'll fill it in with black and say OK. Now I've got a blacked area for my bottle that I can start painting in. If I need to make a copy of a layer, there's several different ways we can do it. First of all, I've got my Move tool selected. The keyboard shortcut for it is V, remember. Let's say I needed to make a copy of this black circle. The black circle's on layer 2. If I hold down my Option key, I get a double arrow, and now when I click and drag, you can see it quickly makes a copy, and when I release it, layer 2 has been copied and it's been placed exactly where I need it to be placed. That's kind of a quick and easy method of doing that. Another way of making copies is by dragging any layer to the new layer icon at the bottom right hand corner of your layers palette. So if I click and drag layer 2 copy down there, when I release on top of it, you can see I get a copy of layer 2 copy, and it's in the same place, so I do need to move it in order to see that copy. A final keyboard shortcut way of making a copy of a layer is by hitting Command J. This will make another copy of that layer right on top of where it's at, and of course you need to move it to see it. So Command J, clicking and dragging a layer, or if you've got your Move tool, holding down Option are all three ways of copying layers you're working on. Let's say I needed to delete something that's on a layer, but I don't want to delete the layer all by itself. Let's say I wanted to get rid of my little mask that I created on top of my bottle, but I want to keep layer 3. Well, I've got layer 3 selected. If I just hit my delete key, it's going to delete away that entire layer by itself, not what I want. Instead, we need to make a selection of everything that's on the layer. This is where Select All comes in. Selecting All, or Command A, I'll do that, Command A, will give me a marquee that runs all the way around the edge of my document. I can see the marching ants. Now that I've made a selection, I can hit Delete, and it keeps my layer 3 but deletes everything that's inside of that layer. This is a common mistake a lot of people get into when they have a bunch of layers and they're wanting to delete stuff. They'll start hitting delete, but they don't really mean to get rid of that layer. They want to keep it. So make sure you select all to select it and then delete it from there. By the way, if you didn't pick it up, if you need to deselect something, Command D will deselect it, and if you need to reselect something, Shift Command D will reselect whatever selection that you just got rid of. This final set of keyboard shortcuts helps you move between layers. If you find that you've got a lot of layers and you don't just want to use your mouse to quickly jump between layers, you can hold down Option and then use your open and close bracket keys to move back and forth between the different layers, up and down. All I'm doing is holding down Option and then moving back and forth between those two.